Dear Sandy, even though it's been a year since we got separated at the cruise ship, I can't stop thinking about you. I promise, when we meet again, just like Daddy never lets Diane go, you will be mine forever.
17 years ago, on the magnificent, sun-drenched decks of the Mediterranean Princess, a 9-year-old Tae Woo had his heart broken for the very first time. The cruise ship had finally docked. The magical 7 days of endless ocean and fireworks were over. And Sandy, the brilliant American girl with the heavy robotics book, had to go back to New York. Tae had cried. He, the proud heir to the Woo syndicate, had sobbed openly by the gangway, ignoring the gentle, comforting hands of his adoptive parents, Zayd and Diane. Before she walked away with her parents, Sandy had reached deep into the pocket of her bright yellow sundress. She pulled out a small, perfectly polished titanium gear and pressed it into his hand. She told him it was the centerpiece of her favorite mechanical puzzle. She explained, with the serious logic of an 8-year-old genius, that a machine cannot work without its core, and he was her favorite core memory. Tae had placed that gear inside his antique brass pocket watch, right next to the picture of his biological parents. He had never taken it off. Now, at 25, Tae Woo was no longer a boy in a Hawaiian shirt crying over a goodbye. He had grown into a spectacular man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and possessed the exact same quiet, lethal grace as his adoptive father Zayd. But unlike Zayd's historically dark and terrifying aura, Tae radiated a warm, steady calm. He had inherited Diane's endless patience and Zayd's fierce, unyielding loyalty. He was a man who commanded ultimate respect from thousands of people without ever having to raise his voice. His life was full. Zayd and Diane had brought 2 more children into the world over the years. A fiery little sister who ruled the house, and a quiet brother who idolized Tae. His family was loud, chaotic, and incredibly loving. Tae had an entire empire at his fingertips, having taken over the legal and less legal operations so Zayd could finally retire and travel the world with Diane. Tae had everything a man could possibly want, but in the quiet moments, late at night, he still thought about the brilliant girl with the cornrows and the unapologetic attitude. He had never forgotten her. The summer beach party in Malibu was an exclusive, high society event. The sand was pristine, lined with glowing white lanterns and luxurious, sheer cabanas that fluttered in the evening breeze. The ocean air smelled of salt, expensive perfume, and aged champagne. Tae was dressed in a simple, perfectly tailored cream linen shirt, the sleeves rolled up casually to his forearms to reveal the edge of his dark tattoos, paired with dark tailored trousers. He stood near the edge of the party, a glass of sparkling water in his hand, looking out at the dark, crashing ocean. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He answered it without looking at the caller ID, a soft, fond smile automatically forming on his lips. Are you actually socializing with the guests, or are you brooding silently by the water like your father used to do? Madame Wu's sharp, elegant voice came through the speaker. Even in her 80s, Granny was as formidable, terrifying, and fabulous as ever. She refused to age like a normal person. I am simply enjoying the view, Granny, Tae replied, his voice deep and smooth. The party is fine. The security perimeter is secure. There is no need for you to worry. I never worry, Tae. I calculate, Madame Wu corrected smoothly. You are 25 years old, my sweet boy. You should be breaking hearts and dominating the dance floor, not staring at fish in the dark. Trust your instincts tonight. I had a very strong feeling about this party. Keep your eyes open, Tae. She hung up before he could reply, which was her standard way of ending phone calls. Tae chuckled quietly, slipping the phone back into his pocket. He turned around to walk back toward the main pavilion, deciding he should at least make an appearance near the hosts. And that was when he saw her. Time did not just slow down, it completely stopped. The loud, pulsing music of the party faded into a dull hum. The entire world narrowed down to a single spot near the tiki torches. She was standing near the warm golden light, looking out at the water. Her flawless dark skin practically glowed in the firelight. Her hair was styled in beautiful, long goddess braids that fell elegantly past her shoulders, catching the ocean breeze. She was wearing a flowing, ethereal white maternity dress that draped beautifully over her frame. She was pregnant. Her delicate hand rested gently, protectively on the very noticeable, beautiful curve of her stomach. Tae felt all the breath leave his lungs in a sudden, sharp rush. It had been 16 years. They were adults now. But he would know those expressive brown eyes and that calm, brilliant aura, absolutely anywhere. It was Sandy, Beside her stood a man. He was tall, conventionally handsome, wearing a very expensive designer shirt, but he was completely ignoring her. He was typing rapidly on his phone, a strange, secretive smile on his face as he texted. When Sandy turned to say something to him, the man's smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of deep annoyance. He muttered a short reply, not even bothering to make eye contact with her, before turning his back entirely and walking a few paces away to take a phone call. Sandy watched him walk away, a fleeting shadow of deep weariness and quiet sadness crossing her beautiful features, before she turned her attention back to the ocean. Tay's heart hammered wildly against his ribs. He felt exactly like that 9-year-old boy again, completely captivated and entirely terrified. He took a slow, steadying breath, letting the familiar ticking of his pocket watch against his chest ground him. The fact that she was pregnant, the fact that she was with another man, did not matter to the overwhelming rush of emotion flooding his system. He had to speak to her. He walked toward her, his footsteps silent on the soft sand. "Excuse me," Tay said, his voice soft, gentle, but carrying easily over the sound of the crashing waves. Sandy turned. She looked at him, her polite, distant party smile firmly in place. She expected another wealthy guest making small talk. But as her eyes traveled over his face, taking in his sharp jawline, his warm, intense dark eyes, and the powerful way he held himself, the polite smile faltered completely. Her breath hitched in her throat. "I was wondering," Tay continued, a slow, incredibly gentle smile spreading across his handsome face, "if you still know how to properly engineer a structurally sound 4-tier chocolate cake." Sandy's eyes widened completely. The glass of fruit juice in her hand trembled so much she had to hold it with both hands. "Tay?" she whispered, her voice barely carrying over the wind. It sounded like a prayer. "Hello, Sandy," Tay said softly. He stepped closer, the physical space between them suddenly vanishing. "It has been a very long time." A beautiful, radiant smile broke across her face, completely transforming her and chasing away the sadness that had been there moments ago. "Tai Wu. I cannot believe it. You are actually here, and you are so incredibly tall." "I finally grew out of the palm tree shirts." Tai chuckled softly, his eyes drinking her in. He looked down at her stomach, his gaze entirely gentle, respectful, and filled with genuine wonder. "You look absolutely magnificent, Sandy. You are glowing." Sandy blushed slightly, a warm color rushing to her cheeks. Her hand instinctively rubbed her stomach again. "Thank you, Tay. It has been quite a journey. I am about 6 months along now. Do you want to sit down?" Tay asked immediately, his natural protective instincts flaring to life. "You should not be standing for so long on this uneven sand. There is a quiet cabana just over there, away from the speakers. I can get you some comfortable pillows. I can get you some food. Are you hungry?" Sandy laughed, the sound bright, musical, and melodic. It was exactly how he remembered it, and it made his chest ache in the best way possible. "You are still trying to feed me," she smiled, her eyes shining. "Some things never change with you Wu men. Yes, sitting down sounds heavenly right now. My feet are absolutely killing me." Tae gently offered her his arm. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, glancing briefly in the direction her partner had walked off to, before looping her arm securely through Tae's. The physical contact sent a jolt of pure electricity straight to his core. He led her carefully to a secluded, comfortable cabana draped in white sheer fabric, far away from the loud music and the crowded dance floor. He helped her sit down on the plush, oversized cushions, gently adjusting a thick pillow behind her lower back to ensure she was perfectly comfortable. "Stay right here," Tay commanded softly. "I will be back in exactly 60 seconds. Tay walked swiftly to the lavish catering tables. He filled a small porcelain plate with fresh tropical fruits, mild artisan cheeses, and a few decadent chocolate pastries, remembering clearly how much she loved sweets when they were children. As he walked back toward the cabana, he glanced toward the spot where he had first seen her. The man she arrived with was still on his phone. He was pacing furiously by the tiki torches, completely oblivious to the fact that he had left a pregnant woman standing alone for nearly 20 minutes in a crowd of strangers. A brief, cold flash of pure Wu Syndicate anger flared violently in Tay's chest, but he forced it down immediately. He locked it away. Tonight was not about the other man. It was about Sandy. He would not ruin this moment with anger. He returned to the cabana and set the plate down gently on the low wooden table in front of her. He also handed her a fresh bottle of chilled, premium water. "You are an absolute lifesaver," Sandy sighed happily, picking up a large red strawberry. "So, Tae-woo, the heir to the Grand Empire. What on earth are you doing at a random beach party in Malibu?" "Expanding the family business," Tae said smoothly, sitting on the cushion directly opposite her so he could look at her face. "My father officially stepped down a few years ago. He and Diane spend most of their time traveling the globe now, chasing my little brother and sister around different continents. So, I am running things here, keeping everything legal and highly profitable." "Legal?" Sandy teased, raising a perfectly shaped eyebrow in that exact same skeptical way she did when they were kids. "That is a very flexible word for your family, if I remember correctly. We are model citizens now." Tae smiled warmly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "And what about you? Did you become a master engineer like you planned? Are you building robots that will take over the world?" Sandy's smile softened into something deeply proud and fulfilled. "I did become an engineer. I design artificial limbs, robotics that help people walk again after accidents, or hands that can hold a cup of coffee. It is incredibly complicated, very stressful work, but I love every single second of it." "That is incredible," Tae said, his voice thick with genuine awe. He meant every single word. "You always wanted to build machines that mattered. You always wanted to fix things. You actually did it. I am so incredibly proud of you, Sandy." A soft pink blush rose to her cheeks again. They fell into a comfortable, warm silence, the 16 years of separation melting away like they had never even existed. The air between them was thick with unspoken history and a deep, undeniable connection. They just sat there, looking at each other, while the ocean crashed against the shore in the distance. Tae felt an overwhelming rush of pure affection. She was just as brilliant, just as captivating, and just as beautiful as he remembered. And the absolute truth was, the fact that she was carrying another man's child did not deter him for a single second. It did not change how his heart raced when she smiled. If anything, seeing her like this, creating life, made her seem even more remarkable to him. He just wanted to be near her. He just wanted to make sure she was safe and happy. The sheer white fabric of the cabana was suddenly pulled back with a sharp, aggressive tug. "There you are," an irritated, flat voice said. It was the man from earlier. He stepped into the quiet cabana, looking flushed and highly annoyed. He glanced at Tae with a brief, dismissive look, not even bothering to introduce himself, before turning his entire focus to Sandy. "I have been looking all over the beach for you," the man said, though he did not sound worried in the slightest, just greatly inconvenienced. "I have to head back to the city right now. My client is having a major crisis, and I need to handle the paperwork at the office tonight." Sandy's face fell instantly. The radiant joy and warmth drained completely from her eyes, replaced by a quiet, heavy resignation that absolutely broke Tae's heart into pieces. "Now? But we just got here, David. You promised me we would stay for the fireworks. You promised we would spend the evening together." So his name was David. Tae mentally filed the name away in a very dark, locked room in his mind. "Sandy, please do not do this right now." David sighed loudly, rubbing the bridge of his nose as if she were a massive burden. "It is work. You know exactly how demanding the firm is. I cannot just ignore my phone. Just get a ride share back to the hotel when you are tired. I will call you tomorrow afternoon." David did not wait for an answer. He did not ask how she was feeling. He did not look at her stomach to say goodbye to the baby, and he certainly did not ask who the massive, intimidating man sitting across from his pregnant girlfriend was. He simply turned around and walked out of the cabana, his phone already glued back to his ear, his fingers typing quickly to whatever secret conversation he was having. Sandy sat perfectly still, staring at the empty space where David had just been. She carefully placed her half-eaten strawberry back on the porcelain plate. She looked incredibly small, exhausted, and lonely in that moment. "He is very busy," Sandy said quietly, her voice tight and trembling slightly. She was trying to convince herself more than she was trying to convince Tae. "He is a senior partner at his law firm. He has a lot of pressure on him right now." Tae did not say a single word about David. He did not point out how utterly disrespectful the man was, or how a real man should treat the beautiful woman carrying his child. He knew Sandy was smart. She did not need him to point out her pain. Instead, Tae simply reached into his pocket. He pulled out his heavy, antique brass pocket watch and placed it gently on the wooden table between them. He clicked the top button. The watch popped open with a soft metallic sound. Sandy looked down. There, resting securely against the glass face of the watch, perfectly preserved, was the tiny titanium gear she had given him 16 years ago on the gangway of the cruise ship. "You kept it," Sandy breathed, her eyes welling up with sudden, thick tears. She looked up at him, her chest rising and falling quickly, her breath catching. "All this time, you actually kept it." "I told you," Tay said softly, leaning forward until he was close enough to catch the tear that fell down her cheek. His dark eyes never left hers, burning with absolute sincerity. "You were my favorite core memory. I never let you go, Sandy. And I do not plan on starting now." She could not speak. The sheer magnitude of what Tay was showing her, the realization that this powerful, incredible man had carried a piece of her with him, every single day since they were children, left her completely speechless. "You do not have to say anything," Tay said softly. His voice was a gentle, soothing rumble. He reached out with a clean linen handkerchief, and carefully, respectfully wiped the tears from her cheeks. "I just wanted you to know that you are not alone, Sandy. Not tonight, and not ever again if you do not want to be. Now, let us get you out of here. You are exhausted, and you are absolutely not taking a rideshare back to the city." Sandy nodded slowly, letting out a shaky breath. Okay, Tay." Tay gently helped her to her feet, supporting her weight effortlessly. He guided her out of the Malibu beach party, entirely ignoring the curious stares of the wealthy guests. His sleek, black luxury sedan was waiting near the entrance. He opened the passenger door, helped her inside with the utmost care, and made sure she was comfortable before getting into the driver's seat. The drive back to Los Angeles was incredibly peaceful. The interior of the car was quiet, save for the soft, calming jazz playing through the speakers. Sandy leaned her head against the cool leather seat, her eyes heavy. She had spent the last few months feeling completely invisible in her own relationship. David was always busy. He was always taking urgent phone calls in the other room, always leaving early for the office, always going on unexpected weekend business trips to handle sudden client emergencies. She had convinced herself that it was just the stress of his career, that he was building a future for their family. But sitting in the quiet safety of Tay's car, she realized how exhausted she truly was from carrying the emotional weight of her pregnancy entirely on her own. "Get some sleep, Sandy," Tay murmured, keeping his eyes on the dark road. "I promise you are safe." Over the next few weeks, Tay became a steady, quiet anchor in Sandy's life. He did not push her romantic boundaries, and he never spoke a single bad word about David. He simply filled the massive, empty spaces that David constantly left behind. When David had to cancel their weekend plans for yet another sudden legal conference, Tay showed up at Sandy's apartment with 2 massive bags of groceries. He spent the entire Saturday cooking massive batches of healthy, nutrient-rich meals, freezing them in neat containers so she would not have to cook after long days at the engineering lab. When Sandy complained casually over a text message that her lower back was aching, Tay arrived at her office 3 hours later, holding a highly specialized ergonomic office chair he had specifically ordered for her, ignoring the terrified stares of her coworkers as the massive Mafia boss casually assembled furniture in her cubicle. "You really do not have to do all this, Tay," Sandy told him one evening. They were sitting on her living room sofa. David was out of town again, leaving her alone in the quiet apartment. Tay had brought over a box of fresh, warm cinnamon rolls because she had mentioned craving them the day before. "I want to," Tay replied simply, handing her a cinnamon roll on a small plate. "I care about you, Sandy. I always have. And I care about the baby. You are carrying a life, building a future. You deserve to be surrounded by people who make things easier for you, not harder." Sandy looked down at her hands. "David is just... He is under a lot of pressure at the firm. He wants to make senior partner by the end of the year." Tay looked at her, his dark eyes incredibly soft but incredibly serious. "A real man does not find his family to be a burden, Sandy. A real man considers it his highest privilege to take care of the woman he loves." Sandy felt a sharp ache in her chest. She knew he was right. Deep down, the quiet, undeniable truth was that she felt more cherished, more protected, and more seen in the few weeks she had spent reconnecting with Tay than she had in the entire 3 years she had been with David. Before she could respond, Tay's phone vibrated heavily on the coffee table. He picked it up, glancing at the screen. His warm expression instantly tightened into a look of deep, profound sadness. "Is everything okay?" Sandy asked softly, setting her plate down. "It is my grandmother," Tay said, his voice unusually thick. He rubbed his forehead, suddenly looking very tired. Her health has been declining rapidly over the last few months. She is resting at the family estate now. The doctors say. They say it is only a matter of days. Her heart is simply giving out. Sandy reached out instantly, placing her hand gently over his large, warm hand. Oh, Tay. I am so incredibly sorry. You should go to her right now. Tay looked down at her small hand covering his, then back up to her eyes. She actually asked for you. When I told her I found you again, she practically demanded that I bring you to the estate. She said she wanted to see the brilliant American girl who managed to steal her grandson's heart twice in one lifetime. Will you come with me? Of course I will, Sandy said without a single second of hesitation. The Wu family estate was a sprawling, breathtaking mansion, tucked away in the quiet, wealthy hills outside the city. When Tay guided Sandy through the grand wooden doors, the house was completely silent, filled with the soft scent of fresh white orchids. Zaid and Diane were waiting in the grand hallway. Zaid's dark hair was heavily silvered at the temples now, and Diane looked just as elegant and beautiful as ever. When Diane saw Sandy, she did not offer a polite handshake. She simply walked forward and wrapped Sandy in a warm, fiercely maternal hug, being incredibly careful of her pregnant stomach. It is so wonderful to see you again, Sandy, Diane whispered, pulling back to give her a watery, genuine smile. Thank you for coming. She is awake right now, Tay. She is waiting for you both. Tay gently held Sandy's hand as he led her up the grand staircase and down the long, carpeted hallway to the master suite. The bedroom was massive, bathed in the soft, golden light of the late afternoon sun. Propped up against a mountain of plush silk pillows in the center of the massive bed was Madame Wu. She looked incredibly fragile, her silver hair loose around her shoulders, her skin pale and thin like delicate paper. But when her sharp, dark eyes landed on Tay and Sandy, the familiar, terrifyingly fabulous spark of the Wu family matriarch flared instantly to life. Well, do not just stand there in the doorway like terrified tourists, Madame Wu commanded, her voice raspy and weak, but her tone as authoritative as ever. Come here, bring her closer to the light so I can see her. Taye smiled a sad, loving smile, and led Sandy to the edge of the bed. He pulled up a velvet chair, so Sandy could sit down comfortably. Madame Wu looked at Sandy, taking in her beautiful face, her neat goddess braids, and the prominent curve of her stomach under her soft maternity dress. A slow, deeply satisfied smile spread across the old woman's face. You still have excellent posture, Madame Wu noted, her eyes crinkling, and you are creating life. You look absolutely magnificent, my dear. Tai told me you build artificial limbs now, that you use your brilliant mind to fix broken people. I try my best, Madame Wu, Sandy said softly, her heart aching at how fragile the great woman looked. It is an honor to see you again. I still remember the fireworks you organized on the cruise ship. I threatened the event planner's life for those fireworks. Madame Wu chuckled weakly, though the laugh quickly turned into a soft, dry cough. Tay immediately reached out, holding a glass of water to his grandmother's lips with infinite gentleness, until the coughing passed. Madame Wu rested her head back against the pillows, taking a slow, shallow breath. She reached out with a trembling, frail hand, and Sandy immediately took it, holding the old woman's cold fingers in her warm grasp. Listen to me, Sandy, Madame Wu said, her voice dropping to a quiet, intense whisper. Her dark eyes locked onto Sandy's. You are a strong, brilliant woman. You are going to be an extraordinary mother to that child. Do not ever settle for a life where you are simply tolerated or pushed to the side. You deserve to be the absolute center of someone's universe. You deserve to be worshipped. Sandy felt a hot tear escape her eye and trace down her cheek. She knew exactly what Madame Wu was talking about. She gently squeezed the frail hand. Thank you. I will remember that. Madame Wu turned her gaze to Tay. Her eyes softened completely, filling with a profound, endless pool of absolute love. My sweet boy. My strong, beautiful grandson. Tay sat on the edge of the mattress, leaning down close to her. I am right here, Granny. You are a good man, Tay, Madame Wu whispered, reaching up weakly to touch his cheek. You have your father's fierce loyalty, and your mother's beautiful heart. Love this woman. Protect her. And when that baby comes into the world, you love that child exactly the way Zaid loved you. You show them what it means to be a Wu. I will, Granny, Tay choked out, a single, heavy tear falling from his dark eyes and landing on the silk blanket. I promise you I will. Good, Madame Wu sighed, a look of absolute peace washing over her fragile features. Her eyes fluttered shut, and a faint, highly satisfied smile lingered on her lips. I am very tired now. I think I will just rest for a little while. Tay held his grandmother's hand, bowing his head as a quiet, heavy silence filled the grand room. Sandy reached out, wrapping her arms securely around Tay's broad shoulders from behind, pressing her face against his back, offering him the same silent, steady comfort he had been offering her for weeks. Madame Wu passed away peacefully in her sleep later that night, surrounded by the family she had fiercely protected and unconditionally loved for over 8 decades. The following days were a blur of quiet mourning and heavy grief at the Wu estate. The syndicate operations were completely paused out of deep respect for the matriarch. Men in dark suits lined the long driveway, standing in silent honor. Through it all, Sandy did not leave Tay's side. She requested an extended leave of absence from her engineering firm, entirely ignoring David's frantic, annoyed text messages, asking why she was not at the apartment to cook his dinner. David's complaints felt completely irrelevant to her now. Her entire world had shifted. She stood beside Tay during the private, beautiful funeral service. She held his hand when he delivered a quiet, incredibly moving eulogy that made even the most hardened syndicate bosses weep silently. And when the long, exhausting day was finally over, she sat with him on the massive balcony of his private suite, looking out at the dark, starlit sky. Ty was sitting on a low lounge chair, his elbows resting on his knees, his head buried in his hands. He had been a pillar of absolute strength for his parents and his younger siblings all week, but now, in the quiet dark, the heavy weight of his grief was finally catching up to him. Sandy walked over slowly. She did not say a word. She simply sat down on the wide chair beside him, wrapping her arms around his broad torso, and pulled him gently against her chest. Tay let out a sharp, shattered breath. He turned into her embrace, burying his face in her soft shoulder, and finally let himself break. He cried quietly, his large hands gripping the fabric of her dress like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. Sandy held him securely, gently stroking his dark hair, rocking him slightly just as he had comforted her so many times. I have got you, Tay, she whispered softly into the cool night air. I am right here. I am not going anywhere. As she held the powerful, grieving man in her arms, feeling the steady kick of her baby against her stomach, Sandy realized with absolute, unwavering clarity that her life had completely changed. The quiet, lonely apartment in the city, the absent boyfriend who was constantly glued to his phone, the feeling of walking on eggshells to avoid being an inconvenience, she was completely done with all of it. She loved Tay. She had always loved him, ever since she was a little girl on a cruise ship. But now, seeing the man he had become, seeing the beautiful, endless depth of his heart, she knew she could never go back to a life without him in it. Tay slowly pulled back, his dark eyes red and swollen, but incredibly soft as he looked at her face. He reached out, his warm hand gently resting over the curve of her stomach. The baby suddenly kicked, a sharp, strong movement right against his palm. Tay gasped softly, a look of pure, absolute wonder breaking through his heavy grief. He looked down at her stomach, then slowly looked back up into Sandy's eyes. He is strong, Taya whispered, a beautiful, fragile smile touching his lips. Sandy corrected softly, her own eyes shining with fresh tears. I found out a few days ago. It is a girl. Taya's breath hitched. His thumb gently stroked across her dress, directly over where the baby had kicked. A girl. A brilliant, beautiful little girl who is going to build machines and change the world, just like her mother. Tay, Sandy said, her voice trembling slightly, but carrying a sudden, fierce determination. I am leaving David. I do not know how everything is going to work out, and I know my life is incredibly complicated right now, but I cannot stay with him. I want a real life, a life where I am loved. Tay's hand moved from her stomach, gently cupping her face. He leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers, closing his eyes as a heavy, profound sense of peace finally settled over his grieving heart. Your life is not complicated, Sandy, Tay murmured softly, his breath brushing against her lips. It is perfect, and you never have to worry about how it will work out, because I am going to spend every single day of my life taking care of both of you. You are my family now. He leaned in the rest of the way, capturing her lips in a soft, incredibly tender kiss. It was not rushed. It was not demanding. It was a sweet, desperate promise, a sealing of a bond that had started 16 years ago and had finally found its way back home. And as Tay kissed the beautiful, brilliant woman he had never stopped loving, the antique brass pocket watch ticked steadily in his pocket, keeping perfect time with the new, beautiful future stretching out ahead of them.